Welcome to my channel, The Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and today I'm going to be tackling the repot of this Cymbidium orchid. Now, the first time you saw this orchid was when I purchased it on my Houston orchid shopping spree extravaganza, maybe like about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I purchased this Cymbidium. It's the second one in my collection, but when I bought this, I was very skeptical of this media that it's been potted in, and I've been wanting to get it out of here for quite a while, simply because I don't like how that looks. And I don't know what's in there. I don't really have any kind of feel for how to water it because I don't know what's inside this pot. So I'm hoping that I don't somehow stall or interfere with its ability to bloom, whenever that might be, but I'm really feeling the need to tackle this. It has been dropping some leaves recently. I'm not entirely sure if this is normal or not. And I'm also noticing that the older part of the plant is still, in front of this newer growth. And I'm thinking I need to cut that off. And then back here, the newer growth that would be trying to take off would be jammed right up against the edge of the pot. So I don't like how this is in the pot. I don't like what's in the pot. And I don't like that the leaves are turning yellow. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do this today. Now, my initial thought is that I'm going to put it back in the same pot. Cymbidiums tend to like taller, more narrow pots because of how their root system goes deeper than many other orchids. And I might get lucky here because when I take this apart, it looks like I might have a double pot. So it looks like it might be a pot inside of a pot. So maybe I will be able to reuse the outer pot with just a little bit of cleaning and disinfecting. The other thing I did is since I've never repotted a Cymbidium before, I looked at several different resources online for how to mix up the media. And I found one that was suggested for humid climates, and I think I'm going to use that one. So I'll be sharing that with you later in the video. And then I'm also going to put a link in the description because they review different types of media, a lot like I did in a previous video that I did about media, but it's in text form so that you can read it and take notes. And then they also offer different ways to mix up your media based on your environment and your growing conditions. So I'm going to kind of deviate from my norm here, and I'm actually going to specially mix the media that I put this Cymbidium back in when I repot it. So let's have a look at the name one more time. Enzinforus maholica crossed with Valerie absilinova, and then the name of this one is Valerie Forest. In the world of Cymbidiums, it looks to be something on the miniature side or something kind of medium sized because it's not, a gigantic Cymbidium. All right. It is extremely windy outside today. I am going to take this outside to clean it off because I think it's going to be an awful mess. It's a little bit too windy to take my camera out there on the tripod. So I will be back with part 2 of this video when I get the root system cleaned off. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, welcome back. This is probably the most horrific inside of an orchid pot I have ever seen. I did get lucky. There was a pot inside of a pot, so I have a relatively clean one to work with. But this, in one word, was stinky. As you can see from the photos that I inserted before I started working out all of the old bark, this, you know, whatever this was potted in, I think has been there since 1984. It was mushy bark. It smelled really bad. And I have tried to work most of it out. You can see that the roots are not in great shape. But the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this old part of the plant, and I think that will rid me of some of these old roots, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so here we go. This can only help, right? Okay, so I've made it through the rhizome here. Now I'm able to work out a little bit more of the mushy stuff that was around the base of the plant. It still smells really bad. Okay, now I'm going to take my smaller clippers and remove some more of the dead roots, because most of them, unfortunately, seem to be mushy. And I'm also going to pull off as much of that old dried sheath part of the orchid. I mean, you can just see here, so many of these roots are nothing but threads. It's probably not useful. I really am pretty astonished that this orchid was even able to survive this, because it clearly did not have a good root system to support it. I want to leave every root possible that has a chance of supporting the orchid, but every time I pull on one, it's so mushy I just cut it off. This orchid may be really set back from this, but I just don't even see how it would have survived much longer in that pot as it was. So I guess better to be set back than completely dead. And I'm still finding pieces of that mushy bark. Before I spray it with peroxide, I will rinse it one more time outside. Okay. Some of the roots that I'm leaving are big maybes. Okay, that one's a bit better. This one is gone. And look. That one has a little bit of substance part way. That's dead most of the way. It's dead. Dead part of the way. This one as well. Some of the ones I'm leaving behind, I'm not even sure that they are going to survive, but I really hate to leave the orchid with no roots. I may have to have a plan B for this one when I'm done, or just put it in the pot and hope for the best. It was way too tight in that pot and had probably been at some point kept wet for too long. There wasn't nearly enough air circulation around the roots for a Cymbidium, I don't think. Okay, so this is where we're going to hold out hope for this plant. There are some new growths right here and again right here. This was the part of the plant right up against the edge of the pot, and had it been left that way, these new growths would not have been able to put down a good root system to support this plant. So when I repot this, it will be more towards the center of the pot to allow these growths to put down roots to better support this plant. So I'm going to let this completely dry, spray it really well with 3% hydrogen peroxide, and then I'll be back when it's dry and it's time to pot it. Okay, this repotting project has taken up the better part of a day with all of the in and outside, and then all of the waiting for things to dry. I did spray this with 3% hydrogen peroxide, and it is thoroughly dry. The roots actually look a bit better than when they did when they were wet and black. Now that they've dried, they've turned white. That gives me a little bit of hope. And I'm going to be following the media recipe, I guess you could call it, that I found on a website that I'm going to provide a link in the description. And I really encourage you to read that article. It was very well thought out. And if you're repotting a Cymbidium, you could get a lot of good ideas about how to go about it. Okay, so this is what I've decided to do. I have the same size pot. Instead of putting popcorn peanuts in the bottom, I have put my traditional large chunky orchid bark in the bottom. Because this orchid now is lacking a root system, I'm not going to be potting it as deep as it was originally. So I am on purpose going to be putting it further down in the pot so that there is less media to be wet. I think that's a good bit of the problem that this orchid had. So I'm arranging the roots in the bottom so that I can plant it a bit lower. Okay, now I'm going to set that aside so it doesn't fall over. And this is the recipe for the Cymbidium media mix for a humid environment. Okay, so it has 4 components. The first component is perlite. Now, perlite is the tiny pieces, and when it gets to be larger pieces, it's called sponge rock, but it's the same material. So you use 40% perlite sponge rock, okay? Then you use an equal amount of cocoa husk, which I have right here. So the amount of these two are equal. And then you use 10% charcoal, which I have right here. And you use 10% wood shavings. Now, I don't have access to wood shavings, so I am having to substitute pieces of sort of shaved orchid bark, which is pine. So I'm going to have to substitute for that particular component. Okay, so it's all going to go in the mixing cup. Oh, so just review, 40, 40, 10, and 10. Okay, so it's all going to go in the mixing cup. I'll kind of layer it, that way there's less mixing to do. Okay, so now that's all mixed up. And remember, I'm potting this lower on purpose. And I'm also centering it in the pot so that the new growths have some space. And I'm not going to be pressing down very tight on this at all. When I was reading about what Cymbidiums prefer, you know, they want the water to be able to run through and not have a lingering wetness about them. Okay. I'm pressing down only enough to help stabilize it. I'll give it a tap or 2 or 3 to settle some of that media. Okay, so, gosh, this orchid was so wet, you know, I even hesitate putting water on it, but I think it probably is important at this point to let the media take in some water. So I think I'm going to water it lightly and then watch it really closely for the next few days just to make sure that it's not staying too wet. And if this Cymbidium comes back with new growth, I will be sure to show you guys. Cross your fingers. If you like this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up, and the subscribe button will be in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.